Hello, everybody. Oh man, that's loud. Welcome again. Tonight is our panel night, and this is a very interesting panel night because house hacking is actually how we, like my family, when they first moved to the United States, bought their first house. 1970. So this was not a new concept. It's just now everyone knows it as house hacking, but this is a powerful way for you to break into real estate. And you know, tonight we have a couple of panelists here tonight that have actually done it for themselves in this generation to show you how you can also go out and buy your own property, have other people help you pay down your mortgage, and also get into your house. So we're just going to do a quick introduction of all the panelists, and just tell us about yourself. Tell us more about who you are, and tell us about house hacking.
All right. Hey, Seth. I started out right after a little bit after I graduated college, a few years, and I bought a 203K property with an FHA loan, which is something we'll talk to at length tonight. Basically, I bought it, we rehabbed it, and rented out 2 of the bedrooms to some of my friends, and so I lived there. Most of the mortgage was covered. So that was my introduction to real estate, is doing a construction project. A little bit over my head, had a lot of issues with the contractor, but we'll talk about how to avoid those. So after that, met somebody at this event, and we started going to sheriff sales, and we bought a few properties with his money and some lenders in Europe, which is not really this event, but I'm happy to talk about it later. We basically get European money to buy houses in North Philly. We started doing it with sheriff sale properties. It's a cool thing to learn about if you're interested in auctions, that kind of thing. But started buying houses from wholesalers and even on the MLS. Had 1 or 2 that we bought completely off market, direct to seller. So we built a portfolio in North Philly. We did our own management, so we started our own management company. And now what I do is offer management services for other investors, typically newer people that need help with certain things like digitalization and helping find tenants and things like that. So that's my intro.
Great, thanks, Seth.
30-second.
Yeah, so we'll just do a 30-second intro for now, and then we'll move into the house hacking later. I realize it's
45 seconds.
Yeah, I know. We'll keep it. We got to keep it on track. So.
All right. Hi, I'm Chutima Barrios, and I am a first-generation immigrant coming to the U.S. 10 years ago for my my study, and just like Albert said, my first property is a house hack.
Man, that was a really good one. That's like, it's really...
That was 15 seconds.
Yeah, that's like super short. Yeah, so for me, I'm a second-generation Korean, so I've been house hacking forever because I've been living with my parents for the longest time. You guys can hear that story, but after living with my parents, and even while I was house hacking, my wife and I were living with my parents too, so we saved a lot of money. So after saving a lot of money, I didn't make a lot of money, but I saved a lot of money. So that's how I got into house hacking. So it's all about mindset.
All right, cool. So I think now we have a general idea of the panelists. What we're gonna go over as the house hacking first, we'll find out why did you want to go house hacking? What your search was like to find a house hack. How did you figure out the numbers to do a house hacking, right? And then how did that all come together, like financing, construction, or whatever, if you did that. And we'll go into those details later. So John, do you want to start?
Yeah. So when I first started, as I mentioned to you guys before, I didn't have a lot of money. So the only way for me to finance a property was through FHA, like a really low down payment. So every offer that my wife and I were putting in, and this was even like 4 years ago, we were always turned down because either we were unfavorable as buyers or we just didn't, like, on paper offer enough for potential sellers to accept our offers. So there was actually one house, it was a foreclosed house. So if you guys want to write this down, homepath.com. Homepath has homes where you can actually get them. If you're a first-time home buyer, they'll actually give you priority over an investor. So regardless of what the investor offers, if you decide to live there and you claim that you're going to live there, they'll give you priority. So I found a Homepath home in a pretty decent area, and because I didn't have money to do the renovation, I decided to do a 203K loan, which was another process in itself. But that's how I honestly got started with just investing. And when I understood the responsibilities of being a landlord, I bought a duplex. I rented out one of the units, and even to this day, I am living in this house right now.
Oh, so before we move on, does anyone have questions for John?
It's actually homepath.fanniemae.com.
I'm sorry, I changed the website.
No, I couldn't find it at first.
My bad.
Yeah, it's Fannie Mae.
Any questions for John? Go ahead.
When you said that you were an unfavorable buyer, what did you mean?
So the question was, what do you mean by being an unfavorable buyer? So I'm sure you guys know that the market is still competitive now, but when you're dealing with homes, there are so many offers, especially when I was offering, people putting 20% down was better than what I was offering at 3.5%, right? Even people who come in at cash, or people who go above asking and guaranteeing what they were offering, they were waiving not only inspections. Waiving inspections, guys, was given at the time, right? It's kind of just like a check off the list, right? But they were also willing to waive the mortgage contingency. So they're willing to guarantee whatever they're offering, which we couldn't do because we were FHA.
Timeline too.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a timeline issue to how quickly you can close.
Yeah, so also too, like if you're an investor, you have cash, you know, you're definitely like more like desirable, right? Because like I'm selling a couple of properties now. If someone came, showed me cash in the bank, ready to close, like I'm more, you know, likely to go with this guy because I'm more certain of collecting the money and not wasting my time. And you know, like what I think he was saying is that the Homepath gives you an advantage as that home buyer because you can, you know, shortcut those guys. And that's the only place where you can, you know, realistically shortcut them and get a decent house.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
Ask him any questions, guys.
Go ahead, back there.
What is a 203K loan?
There we go.
Oh, that's a great question. I was waiting for that one. I was like, setting it up. All right, a 203K loan, it's a renovation loan. So it actually builds in your purchase price and also the renovation for your home. And then it actually puts it into the loan in one loan. Yeah, one package. There you go. Yes.
Do you know if the 203K loan is it only for first-time home buyers or?
So I don't think it is. No, it's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
You just can't have more than one at a time.
Exactly. So the 203K loan is a specific FHA type of loan, but they also have like home renovation loans, I believe, that are not for FHA.
Go ahead.
What like percentage, or like how much for like the renovation like budget did you account in your 203K loan?
One of you guys want to answer? I feel like I'm answering a lot here.
No, there's a.
The question is for you.
Okay.
But I can
Okay.
answer it.
Okay. Go ahead. What was your question? How much did I budget?
Yeah, for like purchase price versus like renovations. Like, is there limits?
Yeah. So at the time when I bought, so you have to understand, this is my first house that I ever bought. I've been living with my mom and dad for like 20 plus years. So I had no experience about buying any houses. I didn't know anything about renovation numbers. So one of the things, the good things in theory, is that the 203K, depending upon how big your renovation is, they'll provide you a consultant. So the consultant goes in there and they say, okay, I think your house is gonna cost X for renovation, and they're gonna budget you that kind of money for you to do the renovations once you get bids from your contractors.
So you went off the consultants.
Yes, yes. So Elijah, so yeah, I went off of the advice of a consultant.
Go ahead.
just to be clear real quick, that's not always recommended. It worked in this scenario, but there's a lot of scenarios where it doesn't. So it works, but also be mindful that it also does not work. The consultant aspect.
Yeah, so to kind of add on to that, like, I think a lot of people want to be very careful when choosing their lender, because the lender is the first thing that I would always make sure that they know what they're doing and they have experience in doing 203K loans. Because, I mean, we can all explain that we had some pretty bad experiences ourselves. And they're like pretty much the quarterback of making sure that you get a decent consultant. If you need references for contractors, they probably had some pretty good experiences with some. You can't hold them to it, but again, they have a lot of experience, so therefore it's always important to work with lenders that have done 2 or 3K loans.
So, to the point of getting a consultant, at what time does it, like, when specifically does the consultant have the opportunity to take a look at a house? So it's like you get pre-approved for a 2 or 3K, and then like when you go and when you go and look at houses, that's when they come out with you, or
It's once the house goes under contract.
Okay.
So once the house goes under contract, then at that point they come out and take a look at it.
Okay, so then in terms of like your budget, like you already need to know, because the consultant is going to tell you like how much, like what you need to do to fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that will determine how much your budget is. But at the same time, if you're doing your numbers beforehand, how are you going to be accurately doing your numbers beforehand if you don't have that consultant to kind of guide you?
Well, to kind of like help you on that, like for me, I didn't know. Like I had no idea. Like this was a house that was my first ever house, my first ever investment. So I don't know if it was a good idea to rely on him, but I just said, okay, like, yeah.
So if I'm hearing correctly, so what it sounds like is like, okay, so you budget first, and then you close on a property, and then the consultant tells you, okay, this is how much it's going to cost, and then may or may not change your budget. Is that how it kind of goes down?
So in my case, it depends, because if there are extra things that, like, I think they give you a cushion.
Contingency.
Yeah, they give you a contingency. It's been a little bit, but they give you a contingency to make sure that you have, like, if there's extra things that are unforeseeable. For example, I had this big oak tree that I wanted to cut. And I was like, hey, can I cut that? And they're like, yeah.
10 grand.
It's gonna cost you 20 grand though. And I was like, bet, let's do it. So I just cut it, you know? So things like that.
Now
yeah.
you're paying that every month for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I'm paying that for now 30 years, but you know, it was one of those things that I honestly, I guess what I'm trying to encourage everyone is, like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, to be honest with you. Like looking back at it now, I'm like, man, I had some pretty bad experiences. My contractors weren't great. My consultant wasn't great. Yet I still live in this home, right? I didn't think I would live in a home that was built in 1890. My house was built in 1890, by the way. So, you know, let alone, I didn't think also a lot of the good things, right? The good things is that I probably have over $200,000 of equity in the home, you know?
Woo!
So,
Yeah,
and who can say that they're paying, I think I did a seminar like a couple months ago, I think I'm paying like less than $300 out of pocket a month because my tenant upstairs is paying for most of my mortgage.
And you got the equity.
And I got the equity, and I got a 3% mortgage.
Let's
You're still living
go.
Yeah. Huh?
You're still living there?
I'm still living there.
All right, we're going to hold off additional questions so we can allow the other panelists to speak as well. We'll come back. I mean, like, we'll let everyone talk a little bit about their experience, and then we'll circle back and we'll open up for questions after Chitima talks. All right, go ahead.
All right, so why we did house hack, right? Everybody here read Rich Dad Poor Dad book before?
Yes.
Right, me too. And I did everything that the poor dad said, right? I get the best education in my country. I get the best job. I even decided to come to the US for further education and get a job again, right? And I get paycheck and I'm like, shoot, right? It's got tax deducted, everything. My bank account never grow because I also have student loan to pay down. Now I don't have money to buy a house, but I want to own a house. I want to own real estate. So house hack is the best way to start And the same thing. So basically, we all poor. So we have to do a house hack. And we all did FHA 2 or 3K loan. Yeah, so because the same thing, it is you buy, say, a shell. That's what we bought. We bought a shell. It is zone RM1, so it can make into 4 units. Full gut rehab, and we live in 1 unit. We rent out 3. I actually get cash flow too.
I could have got cash flow if I was in Temple.
That's your first deal?
Yes. Well, but
Full new construction. That's
good.
It's chill. Yeah.
That's even better.
That's even harder than new construction.
It doesn't come easy. It doesn't come.
Really hard.
Yeah, as the first time we try to do this. Just as he said, that the lender is like, you need to work with the right lender. We try to do this a year before we can close this one. Same thing, 4 units, but it's actually the first floor can be commercial, so it was a mixed-use property, that one that we look at. Near Fishtown, was booming. Everything worked well, like the number worked super great, but the lender couldn't close the deal. Yeah, but remember, keep working, right? Persistent, focus on your goal, and then you're gonna find your deal. So we found this one. It didn't close either. We put offer in. The seller went with another person, but remember, persistent, keep calling the agent, the selling agent. Was it closed yet? Was this deal closed? And it didn't close. So it came back to us, and we can close the deal.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So you actually bought a house and actually did a gut renovation to a 4-unit,
Yes.
which is very intensive, because that's that involves sprinklers and all this crazy stuff.
Yes.
So like
And she makes money on it. That's what
so like I'm just telling you, that's not a small feat. Not everybody will be able to do it to that level. But like, does anyone have any questions for her about that? Oh man, all those hands flew up back there. Go ahead. Right there first, and then you next.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Oh, me? Okay. So when you purchased the property, since it was zoned already, you had to still add the sprinkler system? It didn't grandfather in?
No, because it's 4 units, and it's a rehab,
Oh.
full gut rehab.
No, wait. No.
Oh yeah, that's the architect right there.
No. It was grandfather. We didn't have to, but what happened was the existing building, the kitchens had one sprinkler head, but the contractor cut it. And then when we went with the sprinkler company to fix that sprinkler head in each apartment was like $7,500 or $8,000. But then to sprinkle the whole building was $26,000. So because we were going to live in there and we were at the top floor with the kids, we said, let's just bite the bullet and sprinkle it for different stuff.
That's good. That's my partner in crime.
Great. Go ahead. You had a question right there.
Me?
Yeah.
How did you determine it was going to be 4 units wide, or like how many beds per unit, or how many bathrooms per unit?
So first is a zoning, right? So you have the address. You can look up Villa Atlas, and you can get the zoning. It's RM1, so it's multi-units. It tell you. It depends on the address. Depend on the properties. It can have like this was used as, or have variants and become so and so units, right? So that's how you know. And then how we decide how many units, how to design the unit mix is to use architect. That's him. But yeah.
How long did the project take from like the moment that you first looked at it, submitted the offer, until like actually like closing, and then how long until actually finishing the renovation?
For this one, I think it's about 3 months from when it came back to us. Yeah, and do the loan process to close, and we closed end of 2019, and COVID hit in first quarter of 2020. So the construction got suspended for a while, but we told our contractor to sneak in, keep working, so that we can rent. Because off the record. But yeah, because the loan, it said like it would start paying mortgage after 6 months or 7 months after closing, right? So we have to like finish the construction, blah blah blah. But there was the COVID forgiveness, or like we can tell the bank not to pay, stuff like that. But anyway, we still want to rent it out as fast as possible. Yeah, so the construction took about, so basically it took about 1 year.
Nice. How did you narrow, first of all, number one, that's amazing that you, especially at the time frame, 2019, 2020, is very competitive with general contractors and people actually showing up to do the work. How did you condense that and find the right person to do that project?
Well, we have contractor that we knew and worked with before.
Oh yeah, that's something you gotta tell people, because I was wondering how you guys pulled it off. It kind of makes sense now. You had a contractor before, and he's an architect, so it's starting to make more and more sense, but still, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just a quick question with the 203. So I've done like new construction loans where, you know, they pay out as work gets completed. Is that the same? Does that kind of work the same way? So like as a job gets completed, they get a chunk?
Oh yes, yes, yeah. They draw, yeah.
Same idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only difference is they don't give you the money, they give the contract.
It just goes straight.
And it has to be approved by the consultant. So
yeah,
there's a lot of like hand holding that's not true in hard money.
Okay.
So the good thing is that the banks are naturally trying to protect themselves. Because the banks are protecting themselves, they're actually protecting you. So the contractors need to finish the work first before they get paid.
Right.
They don't even get, they don't get floated any kind of money at all. They have to do the work, it gets done, and then they get paid.
There's one type of loan where the contractor can get a down payment. But that's if it's under 35 grand in rehab. It's called a streamlined FHA loan.
Go ahead, Mike.
Does somebody come out and check the work? So, you know, 10 grand for the countertops and the cabinets, right? Does somebody then, do they take pictures? Does the consultant come out to then check the work? How does that process go to get the contractor paid?
Yeah, the consultant did.
Consultant comes out, says,
check
okay,
and.
we're good to go.
I think he's also asking a question like, is the consultant good enough to quality check the contractor?
That's what they're for.
Like, are they knowledgeable enough to quality check the contractor?
They have to be the approved consultant, right? I mean, the consultant came with their own process.
Okay, so you're saying that these consultants had construction background and we're able to qualify that, you know, the contractor did the work.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Did you have any issues where the consultant said that the quality assurance check failed and they had to redo the work?
Not for this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question's for all three. You guys, Seth, I don't know if you've done a 203K, but what did it take to qualify for the 203K?
Yeah, each one of them can hit on that.
Yeah, qualify. I think so. It's first time, but even if it's not first time, if you don't have any FHA loan, you can still do it. So it's a house that needs work, right? So it's a 203K. I think overall, the purchase price plus the cost has to be certain percent of the total appraised value, ARV, after repair value, right? And you put down only, say for the first time, it's 3.5% down. And then the ARV has a maximum by neighborhood. So say, because Rittenhouse Square they would allow higher ARV in Rittenhouse than, say, North Philly, right?
So wait, just to be clear, it's 3.5% down. So how much money did you need at the closing table for this building that you guys are building?
How much money that we need to bring to table? Not like generally speaking, like what are other fees?
For your deal, for that first deal that you did.
Well, for my deals, I paid 25K. The building was appraised for 750, and
So 25K each.
No.
Or the
25K
cash,
total?
the cash
Total
to
that they
close.
put
On the
down.
HUD, the cash to close.
Yeah,
That was
25K.
and closing cost, 25K?
Yes.
So just so you guys are aware of that.
10%.
And
It's 10% of the total.
So you guys did 10%.
10% of the total.
And depending on what bank you work with, if you don't have that money, because not having the money is not an excuse.
Okay.
There's also things called gifts that banks will accept. If someone were to gift you money, now you can have that in your account and get approved for one throughout the season period.
Elijah's offering gifts of $20,000. You can see it out there.
Or live with your parents.
Just to clarify, so the 10%, that's 10% of it, the ARV?
I think with the closing cost, wasn't it like 10%?
No, because so total cost was 650, building and construction renovation cost 650.
Your loan amount.
Yeah, the loan amount. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Transfer taxes are really like. Oh yeah. Okay.
All right, John, now you answer that. Qualifying for the FHA and what was your down percent that you needed for it?
Yeah, my down was about 20 grand from what I remember, and that I remember that pretty clearly because I remember thinking that was like a hell of a lot of money for me. What was I gonna say? Oh, one of the things I just want to mention is the FHA 203K loan is a conventional loan. So the highest max like you can get for units is 4 units. So she did a great job. Is there questions?
Let's go. Let Seth answer the qualification. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a real job. Like, they're going to do the same thing that they would do for anybody trying to buy a house. Although, what I can say is FHA is the most strict. They really are looking at your bank statements to see your seasoning period, and they really don't. Like, I had to spend hours proving to them that I sold my car to my dad, which is exactly what happened. I wasn't trying to pull any tricks, and they're like, "Where did this, $5 grand come from?" I'm like, "I sold my car." And they're like, "Well, can you get the owner of the car to sign the title and send it to us?" I'm like, "Come on, I sold the damn car." Anyway, so I had 3.5%, although the way that they tricked it on the HUD, and they did some HUD magic, which we call in real estate, you can move the numbers around anyway. I think the down payment was 0, but they had so many fees in there, and I really didn't check on this. I honestly paid too much out of pocket. It was like 17 grand, and the loan amount was like 190, 180, something like that. But yeah, I just really didn't, kick enough of the lender to say, what are all these fees for? What am I paying? What is this? But they made it look smaller because the down payment was essentially 0. I don't think that's possible anymore. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I want to also point out, I think every single one of everybody on this panel mentioned that they needed savings to get this thing done. Because, closing costs, from what I'm hearing, is not cheap on FHA loans. And, because, it's like a great program, people, consultants, whatever, they're going to feed the heck out of you. So you have to budget that in and have that savings ready if you're going to go down the FHA route. I think everyone here did the FHA route, but I think there's how we started off, like when my grandma first moved over to the States, there was no like a FHA, like we weren't using FHA. She just found a property with a commercial spot upstairs and a tenant upstairs, and she moved into the middle unit. That's where I lived while I was growing up. So it doesn't necessarily have to be rehabbed. It just has to, make sense in terms of dollar amount. So I just want to keep that clear, just in case anyone's worried about doing construction. There's also the possibility of buying a house that is already cash flowing, that you're going to move into an empty unit. And sometimes I'll sell buildings where I have 1 unit rented, so that way you have part of the income you need to qualify for the unit, and then you can move into the empty unit. And I usually leave the first floor unit, which is bigger with a yard, for an owner occupant. So that's something to consider, right? So even though everyone's talking about FHA up here, there's the ability to find other opportunities as well. So we'll now move on to Seth, and let Seth talk about how he got into FHA and all this.
Yeah, like I said, the first one was a construction loan. It was a 203K loan, but I did that exactly what Albert's saying, and Albert's been to that property. 4 units. It was already rented. The 3 units upstairs were all rented, and the bottom floor was vacant, and you need that as a requirement in order to close on an FHA property. So yeah, we bought that. It was already, had proof of income. We had a rent roll, and so you can use that to help you qualify for the loan, because you already see, the signed leases and the rent roll. They say, oh, well, your income as soon as you buy this house is going to be, this amount from those 3 units. And obviously they require 1 unit to be vacant at closing so you can move in there. But there's sometimes there's rules where you have to stay there for a year. Sometimes you can make a lifestyle change, and if you need to rent out that vacant unit that you were living in and make it a full-on rental property, you can do that. Usually after a year, sometimes even sooner than that. Read your mortgage documents. They're long, but read them. Anything else?
Was yours cash flowing? Do you find, because I'm finding when I'm looking at these multifamilies, when I do the math and all, they're not cash flowing. I'm still going to have to put out a considerable amount for me to live in one of the units. Even when when you do the rent and you figure out the CapEx and, rehab possibly for it, the numbers aren't really coming up. I'm getting a little frustrated with that. Or they're in areas that I really myself would not want to live. So I was curious, are yours cash flowing?
Well, it is extraordinarily difficult to find something where you can rent out 3 of the units and actually make money. But keep in mind, every dollar that you save on housing that you could be paying a mortgage or rent for a single family is money that you're really making. So even if you have to shell out a few $100, even $1,000 a month for a mortgage, is like, well, you're not paying $1,500 in rent, in Northern Liberties or so, So that's one, that's one thing to keep in mind. So, but you could also, and I was telling, Alec in the front here, that if you find a duplex, well, look for a duplex that has 3 bedrooms upstairs and a studio downstairs. So you can rent the 3-bedroom for proportionally more than 50% of the total rent that you could get. And so it's more likely to cover most of your mortgage. You can also do this in a single family. You can buy a 5-bedroom house. If you're okay with having 4 roommates, well, you're probably going to be able to pay for all of the mortgage that way. But again, you have to live with, in theory, strangers or, college buddies or whatever. So there are options. Just look for the proportion of what unit you're taking versus the units that are rentable.
And I would say when you're running your numbers, run it as if you're going to rent everything out. And then, because you're not going to be living there forever, maybe the goal is you'll eventually move out and be able to rent it fully. So make sure it cash flows in that situation. And then it sounds like
if you can rent, if you can keep a unit for yourself and make money, that's the best deal you could possibly find. And it's really hard, but it's possible. And if you rent that unit out, boom, you're cash flowing because you already were cash flowing.
Before we get to your question, I just want to highlight again. So what Seth is saying is that look, you're paying rent anyways, right? Right? If you got to live somewhere, I mean, if you're still living in your parents' house, yeah, I get it. But you're still paying rent somewhere. And what he's saying is that even though your rent might not cover, if you're getting another unit upstairs or you have other roommates, if you have a multi-bedroom house and you're living in 1 bedroom, even though it might not cover the entire cost of the mortgage, it's still cheaper than going out there and going to go get something to rent. And plus, you're paying down your equity over time, and that starts to build your wealth slowly. So that's something, not to gloss over, but I just want to reiterate that because I think that's very important. Go ahead. I was just gonna make one more. I'm in Montgomery County, and also one other thing to make note is certain townships will have limits on how many non-related people can live in a single property. With Payne Township, for example, it only allows 3 non-related people in one property. So just
in a single family?
In a single family.
Okay, so a 4-unit wouldn't be problem.
So it would be okay, yeah.
But my idea of the 5-bedroom, I mean, I don't think that's a problem in Philly, although I think in
Pennsylvania. There is that same rule in Philadelphia as well, but who's gonna actually, like, I don't think I've ever seen it enforced.
Only if a neighbor really kind of gets on you, but it's, just no, just is my point.
Go ahead.
I know you said that for the FHA loan,
Yeah, no one
you can't have more than one at the same time, so did you have to refinance?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And realistically, you want to refinance, although I did both of these before the interest rates went up, but you're going to be paying an additional fee called a private, PMI or MIP, mortgage insurance premium, whatever it is. Basically what the bank is saying is you don't have 20% equity in this house, which is the standard, and because of that, we need to have insurance for us. It's not for you, it's for them to say, if you default, we can make sure we get the 20% that we, want from foreclosing. What was the other question?
I think so.
Yes, we refinance. Yes, so you want to refinance to get rid of that. They're usually on the life of the loan, so you can't even go and say, hey, I did an appraisal and we have 21% equity, can you get rid of it? Well, the answer is no. And so now I'm stuck with a 2.75 interest rate on this 4 unit, so I at this point I'm going to pay that mortgage insurance forever, just because the interest rates will never be low enough for me to refinance that.
And did all of you refinance like right after doing the renovations? Like when did you guys refinance?
Some banks have rules where it has to be a year, but again, you can like kind of push some of these rules aside. Like,
same for your deal. Did you refinance as soon as like renovations?
No, I did it when the interest rates were the most favorable. I mean, I started the process right away.
Did you do a streamline?
No, I did not do a streamline, and it's a lot more of a pain to do the non-streamline. Yeah, so $35,000 is the cutoff, I think,
no,
unless it's a duplex or a triplex.
Wait. So 35K. What does that mean?
I did a streamline refinance.
Oh, I've done that before. Yeah.
Wait. So explain that to us. So what is the streamline refinance? What's the non-streamline? What's the streamline? We're just trying to figure out.
So the streamline refinance, the reason why is like I kept getting letters like every month, like you can get a new rate, you don't have to get an appraisal, yada yada yada. And I was like, this is bullshit. And then like after the 6th one that came in, I was like, all right, I think this might be true. So I actually called the company. And the streamline refinances, they don't appraise the house, and they'll give you, they'll lock you in a new rate, whatever the rate is. So I went from like, I don't know, I don't know what the exact numbers were, but I went from like 3.5 to like 3.0, you know what I mean? Like, so I was able to save money without even paying any money out of pocket. So that's what the streamline is. The non-streamline is your conventional way of just refinancing with an appraisal and going through that whole process, which can be kind of a pain in the butt. So I still have my FHA, by the way.
Okay, so you think the normal way of refinancing is a pain in the butt, but then Seth, you said that streamlining was also a pain in the butt? Or maybe
No,
I think we're talking about something different.
I was talking about, there's two kinds of 203K loans, and one of them is a streamlined 203K, which is easier for beginners, and then there's one where you can do more than $35,000 in rehab. And then there's a lot more, red tape that you have to go through. So yes, I did on the 4 unit that was already turnkey. I can't do that, but the previous one, yes, I did a streamlined refinance. And remember, this is not just FHA. The cheapest bank to refinance with is almost always the bank you already have a loan with, because they're not going to charge you origination fees again. They're not going to charge you as many underwriting fees again. They already know the title, like et cetera. It's cheaper for them to give you a good rate. So that's what I recommend.
Go to her.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So when you're
Wait. What's that?
There was a question I was asked for all three. You gotta let all three answer.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, what questions?
I don't know.
About refinancing.
Okay, refinance. Oh yeah, we did the same thing. We did the streamline.
Okay.
Yeah, so it changed from 3.25 to 2.75. Yeah,
You didn't have to
that's why I got cash flow.
Yeah.
That's when I got cash flow coming in, because the mortgage saved like $500 a month.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
So when you refinance, is it still an FHA loan or does it become different?
No, so it's streamline is still FHA, still paying PMI, but if you refine conventional, then become conventional.
So you start the streamline. So basically, what I'm hearing is that there's two FHA 203K loans. You either choose to be streamlined from the beginning or non-streamlined, or you pick it in between.
They call us later. So we go through 203K FHA loan process, done, move in, rent, etc. For me, it's about, I think, maybe 6 months after, my bank called me, hey, you want to refinance? Oh, and coincidentally, because it was at the lowest interest rate month of the entire history, and they were like, you want to refinance? You know, you're going to save so and so money, right? I'm like, are you sure?
You'll know, because you'll get like a bunch of letters and you'll get a bunch of phone calls, and it's like, you won't believe that it's true. And then you're like, wait a second, I think it might be. And then
and I was like, okay, let's do it. But it took a while. It took like 2 months to finish the refinancing process.
So what you're saying that they didn't do the appraisal, they didn't do a new appraisal, but then they basically gave you
a new rate.
They're basing it based on the old appraisal. So even if the market went down, let's go say the market went down,
the current balance, based on the current balance that you have, but they changed the interest rate, right? So from simple ways, from 5%, now you're paying 4%.
Okay, I see.
And remember, you can't cash out because of that. Because they keep the same loan amount.
No
so
cash
if you
out.
do want to cash out, you have to do a HELOC.
And that's a different story, but
which is usually at least 1% higher interest rate.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that you can once you're finished with your FHA loan, you can do a rate and term refi, which doesn't allow you to take out any money, but it allows you to get a different rate, and that's based on your and also reduced fees, right? Because
no, they don't. They didn't charge me any fees.
Oh wow! So okay,
I just literally got a new rate, no PMI. No, I didn't pay that. I checked all the documentation, make sure they're not increasing the loan amount or increasing.
I'm salivating at this loan right now. I don't have an FHA loan, but I'm seriously getting one.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
That's a question. So, one thing that I always thought about is okay, once you house hack, the goal is to get started and kind of grow. What was the next step after house hacking? Was there ever an idea of oh, I'm gonna go rent again, or was the next step to just do it again? What was?
Yeah, have any of you guys house hacked again?
Twice, and I have an option for a third. Although somebody offered me to buy it, I guess Elijah had mentioned it, but
so you haven't rented since?
I'm not gonna rent. What are you kidding me? It's against my morals at this point.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you don't only once. Will you still live in that same building?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so both of you.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I got one.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm actually going to technically have my second house hack because I'm going to be moving in with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. So that one's going to be a great one. But one thing that we forgot to really miss here is I think we talk about cash flow numbers a lot, but let's think about New York and Hawaii, right? Those are the two highest equity places, right? Investors are willing to lose money every month there because of equity play. So in my example, right, if I'm losing, let's just say $300 a year, you times that by 12, what's that? 3,600 times that by 4, what's that? I don't know, but anyway.
I got easy math.
Let's just 4 times 4, okay? $16,000. Are you guys willing to lose $16,000 to make $200,000? Because that's what it was for me.
You're not losing.
I mean, people are looking at it that perspective that they're not cash flowing, but what you're not realizing is that you're getting equity. And again, just make sure you're looking at the specific areas that you're investing in, because some areas are high in equity, and then there's some areas like Detroit where it has no equity but has high cash flow. So you just have to play that game on how you want to play it.
All right, let me break in real quick. So, how do you factor in whether or not you want to go do an FHA house hack? Because I think something that is not being said is that you got to pay rent to live somewhere. But then like with this, you know, method of how you guys are buying these houses and living in a unit and renting it out, you're actually not having to pay rent. And even if you were to pay like some kind of money, it's less than what you would pay for rent in that similar location. Is that what I'm hearing?
If you buy right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a 3-bedroom unit on top, and they're paying $2,200, and like if I were to leave my unit, I'll probably make like $1,300, and my mortgage is $2,525. So, like I do the math as you mentioned. Like, oh, if I were to leave, then how much am I cash flowing? I am cash flowing, but the other play that people are just forgetting completely here is that, like, I have a huge amount of equity, and I can take a HELOC if I wanted to, and I can use that to start investing on other properties.
What areas is yours in?
So I live in Jenkintown, which is like a very suburban area. Yeah.
Just want to shift gears, and we talked about like acquisitions and developments. Just want to go into like property management. Are you guys like managing a property yourselves? Are you guys hiring a third party? What if like a maintenance happened? Just curious. Or do you guys let your tenants know that you guys are the owners? How do you guys work it out?
We self-manage. We let tenants know that we are owner, landlord. But thinking about it, maybe we should have told them we are property manager living in this house, you know? Because we have 2 kids, they're like screaming every night, and like, nobody complains. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I actually happen to have a management company, so it's kind of easy to play either card depending on the situation. But personally, every property that I've lived in and house hacked, they know that I'm the owner. I mean, it's kind of hard to avoid. But yeah, I'm sure you could play that game if you wanted to. But just, you know, make sure the tenants that you want to select and screen for the hardest are the ones that live in your building, obviously. And you know, don't sign with a tenant who's likely to be, you know, a drug dealer or, you know, a criminal in some way. Just like, yeah, you might be able to get away with that in some other properties, but you don't want to live there. I mean, you don't want to risk your safety and your comfortability of life. And find tenants who are, you know, not going to knock on your door in the middle of the night and say, my, you know, toilet's leaking. So just be careful.
Just to answer that question too, because I know these guys haven't done it. I actually lived in a property, and I had a property manager do all the communication with the tenant. So like, basically, they didn't even know who I was. They just thought I was another tenant. You know, like, because I was just like, if they got repair calls, whatever. Like, I'm not gonna go up there and fix it, but I was just like, you know, just call the management company. I was just like, whatever. Like, I already like sectioned that off in my brain. Like, you know, like they're a completely separate thing. But look, I mean, when you're starting out, like, you know, you don't want to like incur too many expenses. So like, you might not even want to go that route just because you're trying to, you know, be scrappy and make it work. So you have to figure out like where you are. I mean, I had a couple of rentals already, so like I didn't have to do it anymore. But like, you might not be in the same situation. You might be like, oh, you know, like that $100 just to go out there to take a look at something is not worth it. You know, it's like, I'll just go up there because $100, like, you know, I could just go to Home Depot and pick up that item and fix it.
Yeah,
or go to YouTube, and, you know, that's how I started learning. But, you know, that's something to keep in mind.
So I have less of a question. It's more of a recent experience I've had based on the numbers that I think would be valuable in terms of like the benefits of renting versus doing the house hack. Because I recently had a friend who was on the fence about doing it, and I kind of showed him these 4 benefits, and those were a good way of him to look at it, to kind of push him over the fence to doing this. And in terms of do you ever rent after you house hack, I actually do now rent from him, because I added value to him. He's like, hey, I'll give you a cheaper rental rate if you move out of your house, which I could then rent for more. But just to quickly go over the 4 benefits, the main one is just if you're going to pay more in rent and now you're paying less, that difference, say you pay $1,500 for your Northern Liberties rent and now you're paying $600, the difference between what your tenants are paying and you are paying. So right there, you're saving the difference between $600 and $1,400. That's benefit number 1. Benefit number 2 is that $600 you're paying, a portion of that is going to equity. So you're not actually losing that money the same way you would be losing it to rent. The third one is your property is going to appreciate. So that's kind of a secret benefit, but over time, the value of your property, you assume is going to go up. And then the fourth one is you get some tax benefits from paying property taxes and all that kind of stuff, that you get to save a little bit of money on taxes every year. So those were kind of what I laid out to him.
Yeah, I guess the first one, the only one that's different in a regular rental property is that you get cash flow rather than saving money on rent.
Exactly.
So, but that principle applies to all of real estate. That's how you're making money in real estate. It's not just cash flow. I think we spend way too much time talking about cash flow, but we're forgetting that I almost never pay taxes. I am gonna have at the end of my 30 years, millions and millions of dollars of equity that the tenants paid for, and also appreciation paid for. So keep that in mind. It's not just cash flow.
Are any of you guys pro program for your rentals that you guys lived in?
Wait, repeat that again?
So pro program, VA, Section 8, rapid rehousing, anything like that.
I've done that. Yeah, so I mean, if there's tenants already living there, just meet them before you move in. But generally, I haven't had a whole lot of issues with those programs. I am happen to be in a lawsuit with a rapid rehousing, but that's a different story. But that was not in my primary residence. So yes, what I had when I bought this 4-unit, all 3 of them had some sort of program. They were on rapid rehousing, and the goal of that is to either get them a Section 8 voucher at the end of their first year of rent being paid for, or they'll have a job that they can pay for rent, or we'll find them a cheaper unit somewhere else. So yes, they're all of them now are Section 8 tenants.
Anybody else do that?
I was just gonna add a little bit on the renting managing it yourself. Like for me, you're gonna have to know your personality a lot. Like I have a high level of empathy, so when I hear a sob story, I always have a high level of empathy. So I realize that's not something that, it always felt heavy for me to be a property manager. So at this point, I'm learning to actually delegate that to property management. And that was just a lot easier for me because I also have a career in real estate as an agent. I'm an investor. So I got too many things going on, and I have to realize kind of what you're good at and what your strengths are.
All right. Any more questions?
Any tips on vetting out tenants?
Well, let's go ask this. I think what you're trying to ask is how do you figure out who you want to live with in your building, right? Because that is I guess is handling other people. How do you figure out who you actually want to be in your building, right? Because it's more important that you live there, and they're not gonna do something crazy or whatever. So I'll let each one of you guys answer.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a lot more important to vet the tenants that you're going to live in the same building with. And you can also do rent by the room, you live in one bedroom. But I would really only recommend doing that with people that you know already, family members or friends. But you can always go on the open market, and you want to physically do the showings, and you want to physically be there and meet these people and talk to them more than just 5 minutes. I mean, I could go all through how I do my background check process. You want me to talk about that stuff? I mean, I do it all the time.
Well, I mean, tell us how you picked it for your house, not.
Well, they were already. I took a risk because they were already there, but I met them in person at the showing and before closing, and I also asked the previous owner if they had any issues with these people. I asked the rental assistance program that they were with. What their background was. I mean, I did the same background check that I do for all incoming tenants, but yes, this was a risk because I didn't have the ability to say yes or no because they were already living there.
All right, cool.
Yeah, so we did the showing ourselves, so we get to talk to potential tenants, but we also have criteria of credit score, background check, income level, 3 times the rent, right? That's the criteria.
Did you have to pick someone that was hard of hearing because you had kids jumping up and down on the second floor?
Yeah, it's like somebody who's really looks friendly.
Yeah, so for me, like I have two stories. I have this first story when I first started, when I had my first tenant, and she turned out to be a great person, just not someone who took care of the property. And again, you can't really reflect credit score on whether or not the person will take care of the property. She always paid on time, but she didn't have good credit. So that was kind of an experience in itself for me to learn. The second time, like I was way more strict. In fact, I was willing to like bring the price down of the rent to find someone that would be suitable for me to live with. And part of that is just having discernment, right? Just like having pretty good connections and vibes and conversations with the person, which I was a little bit more detailed with. And she still lives there now. She's a great tenant. I don't hear her. She pays rent on time. So, I mean, there's no clear-cut way, obviously, but at the same time, it does require like the typical things that landlords should do.
Actually, to add on that, there will be like the rental has a seasonality as well. Like usually people move during say spring, summer, right? Mm-hmm. And then summer is the best. Yeah. We had to start renting in the spring. So there was super low demand on people walking in or requesting to look at the apartment. And I was nervous because we have to start, well, we didn't have to. I can still call the bank and say, you know, I cannot pay yet. But anyway. And there were people coming in that were like, hey, I don't have income. I'm doing like startup business, but I can pay you so and so amount right now, right? Yeah, that's kind of like a red flag, actually. So, and I'm glad that I stick strict with my criteria and wait and yeah.
Just a question for all of you guys. Do you at some point increase the rent, like after a year, or how do you go about?
Yes, I do. Every year. So in the contract, in the rental contract, rental agreement, it said 60 days prior to renewal date or before the contract ends, each other tenants or landlord will give each other notification of the change of the agreements. Yeah, so we just honor that.
Yeah, I mean, to add, I would say if you have a good tenant who pays rent on time for almost or all of the first year, then I would say, yes, offer them to keep the rent the same, excluding your change in insurance and in taxes. Because even for the best tenant in the world, that's gonna screw you at some point because Philly just reevaluated all their taxes and screwed everybody. So yes, just make sure you're not making less money every year just because of inflation, taxes, and insurance changes. But for a bad tenant, you kind of want them to leave, so make them an offer and be like, I'll increase it $200 a month, and you can still live here, but it needs, do an inspection 30 days before they move out, see how good they treated the place, check your rent roll, see how often they paid late, and then just kind of make them an offer and be like, realistically, you were a good tenant or you weren't a good tenant, you were on the borderline, and we were willing to give you this much increase.
What about you, John?
Yeah, so I think it's important that you set the expectation that there's gonna be some level of increase. I think that's important. Like even if you increase it like $25, to them it's like, man, like are they gonna really leave for $25 extra a month? Like, but to you it makes a big difference. And I think also the expectation is important because certain times when we do have tax increases, like you have reasons to why you want to increase those rents, and you don't want to be like 10 years into not raising rents and all of a sudden they feel slighted because you increased it.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that, like, yes, they do increase the rents, because and what you're also saying is a good point too. Like I've seen this happen before, where it's like, oh, the rents is like freaking never changed because we were living there, and then we didn't want to like increase the rent, but like it could what John is saying is like, look, just throw them like a nuisance increase, like $5, $10. So they're used to that. It's going to go up, but it might not go up a lot. It also depends on your personality. If you don't want to increase it, then that's fine. You know, like, it's your house. You just got to go figure out, can you still make the numbers work even if you don't increase it? Because remember, I think what we're trying to do here with this house hacking is pay less in rent and at the same time build equity, build all these benefits of having a house without, you know, paying all of it yourself. Go ahead.
What would be a good average, like a yearly percentage increase on the rent, and what company do you guys use for background check?
Yeah, so the property managers that I use, they increase, if you want, they increase it anything between 3 to 5%. So for me,
are there rules in Philly? I don't think so.
Is there? Oh, I don't think so. But for me, it's more of the consistency and the expectation of just raising it like something. Like even if you really like the person, and you know, like Albert said, if you want to raise it like $5 or $10, at least hold that expectation that the rent will increase every year.
I think it depends on the rent market too, right? If you, like we actually lowered the rent the first year because we tried to rent it out. I was freaking out, not having tenants. It was below the market. Coincidentally, with the COVID year when the rent countrywide increased 20%, the following year I increased rent, and depends on the tenants as well. Depends on I look at the income and just, you know, think about like, put myself into their shoes of like, would they be able to pay? Like, you know, so that's how we think about increasing rent. Background check, we are a member of AAOA. So we have the...
What is AAOA?
The American Apartment Association.
Okay. Yeah. And how do you find that? How do you find AAOA? Like what? Like is
AAOA.com, I think.
Okay. Okay, keep going. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's 2 questions.
All right.
Oh. Okay. What's the question? What software?
Percent increase rent.
I don't have a percent. Yeah, like I said, I figure out what the taxes increased and what my insurance went up, and I divide that by 12, and I give that, maybe add $5. You know, for the good tenants, I'm only increasing by my expense increase. But for the bad tenants, like it kind of depends on how much damage they brought to the house. I mean, it's really a judgment call. Like I've done it $200, I've done $250 for bad tenants because you're trying to get them to leave, but you're offering them an opportunity to stay. It's just sorry, you know, you destroyed the house. It's going to be more expensive. And the other question was software.
Like, what do you use to screen your tenants?
Yeah, so I post all of my listings on my CRM. There's a million different CRMs out there. You just choose the one that you like best. You know, Buildium, Appfolio. I use Hemlane. I use Tenant Cloud. There's 50,000 other ones, right? And so if they offer listing, they should offer also a background check service. And so the tenants pay for it. I don't charge an application fee. I'm actually kind of morally opposed to application fees because I want the most number of leads. I want to get as many leads as possible because I'm like a little different than most landlords. I'm not trying to rent 123 Main Street. I'm trying to bring in as many leads as I can for 123 Main Street, and the people that aren't qualified for that, I'm going to send them to another property that's cheaper. But you know, because of that, I don't want to charge application because I want those applications. They only have to pay for the background check, and they only have to pay for the background check if I've already sent them a lease. I do that very last just to avoid anybody complaining or really any wasted time. I don't sign the lease until everything's all good, or you know, the owner doesn't sign the lease until everything's all good.
As far as your tenant's credit score, how do you go about defining that? Do you put them in another software, or do you have them give you the latest report?
The software I use does credit score, eviction history, criminal history, and it does a little bit of like, this income might not be what they're claiming, and you know, you can verify that independently. Google their business and see, you know, where they work and call them. Don't trust the phone numbers that the tenant gave you, that kind of thing. So that was the answer. Credit score means you want like further qualifications. I do 620, but I have solutions, because in Philadelphia you're no longer allowed to reject for low credit score. So I tell everybody this up front. You're actually not allowed to reject for eviction history, which is crazy.
No, you
But
can
there's
only
ways
go
around
back
it.
only a certain amount of years.
Yes.
You can't go back, and it's only for certain reasons. If they didn't get a judgment or whatever, it doesn't count. Like, it doesn't count as it's not supposed to count as an eviction.
Right.
There's various nuanced rules. I mean, that's a, you know, if you want to find out about it later, we'll have a conversation about it. I just want to ask one final question, because like people in the room want to know, would you house hack today? You know, sometimes the real estate prices are going all crazy, the rates are high. Like, can I even get into this market? Like, what's going on? Can I do it today? And we want to hear what your guys' answers are.
Absolutely, there's a deal in every market. Just, you know, if you have to go into if you have a desire to live in an area that's a little bit more expensive, you know, look at those tips that I told you, like find a duplex with 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms and then a studio or something like that. You can also house hack in units that are not really units, and I won't talk too much about that, but you know, you can move into a garage and finish the garage, you know, that kind of thing. There's a deal in every market, and every interest rate, there's a deal. The interest rate really aren't that high, by the way. They're really not. Everybody's freaking out for no reason. Look at, you know, 2007, they were like at 9%. So people bought houses and are making money and have made money on houses they bought in 2007 at 9% interest rate. So just do your numbers. There's always something that works. You can always make a deal if the seller is willing to sell you.
Yes. Yes, we still look for the new house hack, and the cash flow not working because of the interest rate, but if we get the deal, we would do it, even though you have to pay off pocket, because of the neighborhood is a different neighborhood, safer, things that we like, there's a bigger area, etc. Things that suit our lifestyle, right? And then also look at long term, because the value gonna keep appreciating. That's where you build up your wealth.
I would definitely say yes. I think most of the times when people think of house hacking, or at least for me, is like, how much house can I afford? I probably can't afford that much, so I have to be in a certain kind of neighborhood. But one of my clients, Montgomery County, lives in Maple Glen, $1 million house. He house hacked it. So he was so creative, because so many people overlooked this house. It's $1 million house. So many people overlooked it because to the left of the house, it was an in-law suite. To the right of the house, it was like a doctor's office or a chiropractic office that looked like pretty awkward in layout. But he completely changed the whole layout. On the left side, he's renting it long-term to one of my other clients. And then on the right side, he has it Airbnb. So he's actually making money on that. He's cash flowing on that house, and that house is probably evaluated close to 1.4 million. So again, there's so many ways you can skin a cat. So just keep that in mind when you house hack it.